In late 1968, the vacuum of space caught the edge of a red flag planted firmly in the gray dust of the lunar surface. The Soviet Union had won the race to the moon. Alexei Leonov became the first human to step onto the lunar surface, delivered there by the minimalistic LK lander. To save critical mass, the spacecraft lacked a seat. Leonov performed the entire descent and landing while standing up. Back in Washington, the successful Soviet landing triggered an immediate political crisis. The United States had pinned its global prestige on the Apollo program, and losing the race shattered the international perception of democratic capitalist technological superiority. In our reality, the 1967 Outer Space Treaty established the cosmos as a peaceful sanctuary. In this timeline, a panicked American government viewed the Soviet victory as a direct military threat, leading to a much more aggressive and secretive response. This existential dread transformed the orbit into a strategic frontier, a permanent, militarized standoff for the lunar high ground. The Soviets moved quickly to consolidate their new territory. They launched the Zvezda project to construct permanent, expandable bases on the moon. Chief designer Vladimir Barman engineered a sprawling 9-module settlement. These prefabricated habitats would be deployed, inflated, and then buried under thick layers of lunar soil to shield the crew from radiation, all powered by a local nuclear reactor. To navigate outside the base, cosmonauts relied on heavy, nuclear-powered Lunokhod rovers. These articulated lunar trains allowed crews to conduct long-range geological surveys and mine the soil for helium-3 isotopes, all from a pressurized cabin. The Pentagon responded to this permanent Soviet presence by reviving a 1959 military blueprint known as Project Horizon. The objective was to construct a heavily armed rival American outpost directly on the lunar surface. The moon was now a partitioned territory. Surviving in this hostile environment required both nations to establish massive, constant logistical supply chains to bridge the gap from Earth. Traditional chemical rockets, like the booster seen here, faced a severe physical limit. They burned too much heavy liquid fuel to efficiently lift the thousands of tons of cargo required to sustain these bases. Both superpowers realized that holding their lunar territory required a different engine. They turned to a highly experimental technology, nuclear thermal propulsion. This schematic illustrates the Soviet RD-0410 engine. A nuclear reactor superheats cold liquid hydrogen, which violently expands out the nozzle to generate thrust. This doubles engine efficiency, allowing nuclear rockets to carry significantly heavier cargo and slash travel time between planets. High-thrust nuclear engines erased the previous limits on mass and range. Launching a heavy weapons platform became as routine as delivering supplies to a remote outpost. With heavy lift capabilities established, both nations treated the cislunar environment as a warfighting domain, and the previous treaties regarding orbital weapons effectively collapsed. This map shows Earth's orbit filling with hostile hardware. The Soviets deployed Polyus-Skeef weapons platforms, prompting U.S. retaliation with an anti-satellite network called Brilliant Pebbles. Zooming out to the moon reveals the final escalation, the lunar-based Earth bombardment system. The strategic logic was absolute. By housing nuclear-tipped missiles on the lunar surface, a nation guaranteed a retaliatory strike that would hit Earth 48 hours later, even if its home country had already been destroyed. The heavens were fully weaponized. Humanity found itself living beneath a permanent ceiling of mutually assured destruction, pointing down from the craters of the moon. Maintaining this dominance across the solar system required an immense amount of capital, and the Soviet Union's lunar victory hit a fatal financial vulnerability. This graph tracks Soviet spending through the escalation, pouring an estimated $80 billion into the Zvezda base and nuclear rocket development, forced military budgets to skyrocket, leaving domestic economic indicators to flatline and eventually crash. Soviet leadership prioritized lunar territory over the domestic economy. This massive financial bleed hollowed out the state budget and accelerated the internal collapse of the USSR decades earlier than in our own timeline. The collapse left behind a strange, silent landscape. Humanity had achieved a permanent multi-planetary footprint half a century ahead of schedule. This fortified, desolate base remains as a monument to that era. Humanity finally achieved a permanent presence among the stars, but only after transplanting its oldest conflicts to the craters of another world.